You gonna turn that up? That's fine.
Good morning, Houston and YouTube. This is James Haney. Welcome to the Massive Passive Radio Show, as mentioned, brought to you by Alamo Ria. I am back. I was out last week, but I had to come back and keep our other hosts in line.
Oh, shucks.
I'm sitting to my left is Pat Reisinger.
Was he missing last week? I don't even remember.
I thought we fired him.
Too late. Can't do that. I'm back. So that was Pat Reisinger, and then we also have Ray Sasser sitting across from me. So how are you guys doing this morning?
Doing great. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. We got a wonderful show. Since Ray's not going to say how he's doing, I'm just going to go ahead and keep talking.
Oh, I'm doing fine.
Today
I was just thinking about firing people, and my stepdad told me a long time ago when we hired them, and he says, well, if you fire me, you know you have to pay me. And I said, okay, well, you can hang around.
So anyway, today's show, we're going to be talking about what's next. And to break that down a little bit, pretty much anybody can find themselves in a category. You know, you might be, starting out as an investor or wholesaler, and you just, inundated yourself, drowned yourself into YouTube videos, and you're like, okay, what do I do now? I've seen enough of this YouTube. You could be doing a couple of deals here and there, but you're stuck and you want to scale and grow. So what's next? How do you do that? And then you might be the Tom Brady of real estate investors, and you just might be doing, deals left and right. You might be traveling the world and still doing deals.
And it's still what's next.
Still what's next.
That's going to be the theme for today's show.
Well, you're always in a learning curve,
Yeah. That thing, James and I were talking, we were looking at a property, and you informed me that Brady had a coach. And it's like, okay, why does probably the best offensive player ever played in football, who's going to be his coach, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing about it is it's not just Brady. It's all professional athletes. You can take the top tennis player, you can take the top bowler, you can take the top football player in every position. They have coaches to help them because they always want to get better.
Well, you have to have objective criticism of what's going on with your body and your game, because otherwise it's subjective, which is your opinion, and we never know what we're doing wrong unless somebody tells us.
We were just talking a few minutes before the show, and it's like, we're kind of focusing on Tom Brady. He's one of the greatest. I don't like the guy, but I respect him. He is,
right.
He's a great quarterback.
You can't take away what he's accomplished.
You can't take his talent away from him. But, what has he accomplished? I mean, he's got the most Super Bowl rings, 7 rings now, and he's on pace this year. He's on pace to break another passing yards record. I mean, it's like
with another team, a complete different team.
With a different team.
Well,
but it's like, what's next?
Tampa Bay or whatever?
Yeah, he's on Tampa Bay now. He was with New England, but now he's Tampa.
You know what brought this conversation up? We were talking about Altuve, who's tied for second as the most postseason hitter with home runs. So that means he's a clutch hitter. And they bring in. So who's they going to bring in to say, hey, what are you doing? And sure enough, they have Reggie Jackson is a coach giving them coaching advice. And it's like,
that's second, but he's and done it 75 games, and all the other guys have done it 110.
He may actually end up being the best of all time, and you got to bring somebody in. So it's like you're never too good to have a coach, and that's what brought that. What's next?
Yeah,
how we all have to constantly be changing and adapting. And so that's going to be our theme.
It's amazing you say that, because like you and I and James, all three of us, ask each other questions all the time.
Yes.
Because we don't have the answers. Like you were going to call me about some problem you had, and I'm sure it'll come back up again.
Right.
And I ask you all the time about stuff. You say, well, you know what this is? And I say, well, no, tell me. And then you tell me something, and I learn something else. So you'll always have a coach. And it could be the people right around you,
And a lot of times it is, and that's the power of real estate investor associations. As you're surrounding yourself with people who have figured out, they may not know the that exact problem or every problem, but they might know that solution. Like what's next? What
Or
do
the
I do?
person that can help you solve
Right.
the problem.
Right.
And that brings up another things. I was talking to when you brought up RIAs. I was talking to a seller yesterday evening on my way home. And he's got a property in Idaho, and so I've got somebody that's helping me with the virtual deals and everything. And we got to talking, and I let him know that one of the things that I do is I help run our RIAs, and I explain to him what they are, and that we're connected nationwide. And we have connections all over the country. And he goes, and his property is located in Idaho. And he's like, well, do you have any connections here? I said, well, personally, on first level connections, I don't, but I do have connections that do have connections. So I have them on a second level.
And I would bet money that you have, because of our outreach and because how we don't just interconnect with the local RIAs, we connect regularly with other RIAs, and that's where the people that are deal makers are always going to end up in RIAs because they recognize this, they know the power of it, and I would bet money that you're one step away from very effective, productive, powerful investors in almost every community in the United States.
You're saying that right. Just this week, at night during the day when I take a break from doing my stuff,
Right.
I go through our Facebook, which is Texas Invest. Well, we have two. We have Massive Passive Deal Makers,
Right.
and then we have Texas
Real estate investing
and real
community.
estate investor community. And when I go through there, I look at people's profiles and I look where they're from, right? And I looked at one yesterday, and he said he lived in Houston, but on his profile, on his likes, he said the Alamo RIA San Antonio.
Oh, wow.
So then I sent him a message and said, hey, we got the Houston Alamo RIA now,
Right,
which is
right.
the same organization. You need to attend our meeting on November the 13th. Because I always say, look, if you want to do this business, you need to really hang out with the people that do what you do. I don't care if you've been doing it for 20 years. You still need to come hang out because there's two things. You can learn something else. And the other thing is you can actually help someone, become a better person.
People don't realize the influence that your herd has on you, and that herd is going to go a direction. And if you're at the 20,000 foot view, you need to figure out what herd you want to be in and what direction it's going. And then you need to get there as quick as possible. Even if you just sit in the back of the room or you get lost in the flock, just hang out with the people you want to be around and be like, and it overtakes you. It takes your priorities. It overtakes your time. Before you know it, you're actually getting amazing things done, and it's because you did the first step, and that's to surround yourself.
Well, look at
with
the old
people.
Rich Club. We all used to couldn't
Right.
wait. We'd say, oh, the meeting's coming up. We'd go to the Rich Club meeting, and
Yeah.
there'd be 100, 150, several hundred people there. And you think, well, but you keep going. And because we have the vendors outside
Right,
before the
right.
meeting and everybody's mingling, you get to know so many people that it's not just business. You develop a relationship with people that you would never had a relationship with. And it's really kind of a beautiful thing.
I'd like to tell a little story. Just my personal experience with the Rich Club is, I was on the board of directors in the early 90s, and I dropped out of it for about 10 years because I got too busy. And it's like I got kind of, I don't know, arrogant a little bit because hey, I got this. I understand it. And education-wise on how to put a deal together or do that, I probably was pretty high level at that time. But I dropped out of it for 10 years. And when I went back to it, somebody moved the cheese. I mean, the game wasn't the same anymore. And there were new terms like wholesaling and private lenders and hard money lenders. And it's a whole new horizon. And it's like you wake up one day and you realize you've been asleep for 10 years and you go back in there. Because what I was doing was very narrow, very
Well, they didn't have
very
to Rip
specific.
Van Winkle.
But you don't realize, it's so subtle, you don't realize what you're getting out of stuff are these kinds of things. But when you get involved in it and you see how you change, I mean, look at how you change, and you're influenced by the people you let yourself around and the messages you let yourself hear. And if you're around that person who says you can't do something, you'll never amount to anything, this won't work, you're going to become a believer in that. And the best thing you can do is, I think you need to bolt. If you're sitting down, bolt upwards, make that chair fly backwards with energy, get away from that table and go to the table.
Well, how many times did your mother tell you if you hang around with those people, you're going to be just like them? If you hang around with losers, you're going to be a loser. If you hang around with winners, you're going to want to be a winner.
It's like in the moment there, you're like, Mom, you're wrong. But then you grow up and you're like, wow, she was really right.
Well, it's like I say, if you hang around a barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut,
Yeah. I mean, how many drug dealers are out there that become very successful investors because they get out of that world, they break that chain, and they get into the right place, and they're high achievers. They just started in the wrong crowd.
Mm-hmm. Well, look at us. Okay, real quick. I'm Pat Reisinger. I am a member of a massive passive group, the Houston Alamo RIA. Of course, I go to the San Antonio Alamo RIA occasionally, and but I'm pretty much in charge of getting our vendors, and I'm one of the coaches. We're all three of us are coaches, and if you're new in this business or you want to be in this business, don't go it alone. The failure rate is humongous. We don't want you to lose your money and then have a bad taste in your mouth the rest of your life about, boy, those guys loaned me money and they messed me over. You messed yourself over because you didn't ask for help. Right. Because all of us had to learn, and believe me, we've had to learn, a lot of us, from the school of hard knocks.
Right.
And that's a bad way to learn. So real quick, how we stay on the show and stay on the air is we have vendor sponsors. And real quick, our biggest vendor is Gailey with Bayou City Techs. He's the one that manages the show and does everything for us, builds our website.
I heard he was going to go on a diet, though, so maybe he won't.
I didn't say biggest in that regard. I mean, we go biggest, then we have to go second business, which is on my right.
Why do you got to talk about my weight like that?
Well, I always say, I might be fat, but you're ugly, and I can always go on a diet.
Right.
But getting past all that, you can tell we have a lot of fun around here. I mean, most people, when they talk like that, they get hit, in the eye, But we're kind of used to hitting each other with stuff. But real quick, we're going to have it. It's 9:30. We're going to have Loren with Fantastic Floors. So stick around, because Loren is a very interesting person, and I found out a lot of other things about him this week that we're going to talk about. Also, you can go to our website, which is MassivePassiveShow.com. It's real easy, MassivePassiveShow.com. And you can get all of our vendors. And right now, I think we have close to 20 on there. We even have a guy that owns a restaurant locally, that we use him for food. And when we said we're going to help him out a little bit and put him on our website.
Right.
And because, listen, it's not all about dollars all the time. It's really about helping other people. Because what I've learned in my experience is if I help others, I get helped. And it's a universal law, you know?
And Loren's a perfect example of that, is that you can't know everything about flooring, and you can't wake up one day and have 40 years of experience and know how to overcome things. And flooring is one of those things. In fact, everything
products have changed a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah. So just knowing somebody you can pick up the phone and say, hey, have you seen this before?
Right.
And they know the answer off the top of their head.
Real quick, we got electrician, we got HVAC, we got foundation guys,
Right.
we have engineers, we have everything you need to do a rehab. Matter of fact, I'm getting a new HVAC vendor, and we'll have those guys on by next week. And they promised me they'd get on board. There's guys that I have used for years.
Yeah.
But when we first started the show, they were not sure if they wanted to do it. Now they're sure they want to do it. But I've used these guys for 15 years, so they're really good. They do all my air conditioners. Also, somebody you really need to talk about for just a second is Roger Newman, which is our public insurance adjuster. He helped one of my clients on a fire job, and they were going to give him like $80,000, and Roger stepped in there, and he got almost $200,000, and the house is only appraised at $200,000.
Right.
But it's just like a car. You can buy a car for, let's say $50,000, but if you have to replace all the parts on it, that car costs you $200,000, right?
That's one of those things that if you don't know, you don't know. You think you take the claim and you move on, and you don't realize that there's people out there that will protect your side of the argument or position.
Well, my good friend and also one of our vendors is Mike Repsold at Lucas Cedar, which is up in Willis, and they handle Cedar. If you need Cedar, that's where you want to go. And Mike called me. He said, "What's the name of that insurance adjuster?" So I gave it to him, and he needs an adjuster, plus a friend of his needs the adjuster. So and the two more people are going to be helped by that association of someone I've known for about 10 years.
And I want to interrupt you off this vendor thing, but what you just said is why getting around other people that are doing what you're doing is so important, because you don't know what you're missing. You don't know what you don't know. And you start talking like this, and then next thing you know, Pat says, "Well, did you do that?"
Right.
And it's like, I didn't even know you could do that.
Right.
And next thing you know, you have a solution to a problem that stopped another investor.
You know, a good example that your son, Justin, called me this week and said, "Do you have any septic guys up around the Huffman area?"
Right.
And I said, "Well, I got a couple of guys. I don't know if they do Huffman, but the thing about these septic guys, they all know the other guys that do work in other areas because they kind of overlap." And I said, "Well, I'm going to send you a couple of guys." And then all of a sudden I thought yesterday, I said, "Well, you know, Bill White does water wells up there. I bet he knows septic guys." So I need to text him Bill White's phone number. I hadn't talked to Bill in years, but if he's still kicking, he'll tell Justin where to go to get a septic guy in the Huffman area.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this thing. Of course, I've been doing this for, umpteen jillion years.
Probably 50 years.
Yeah, 50 years. Well, I mean, most of the guys that I would have in my phone book now are dead. So,
So Pat, when you first started rehabbing, did they have power tools back then?
Yeah, matter of fact, they just invented circular saws. Yeah, everybody call them skill saws,
And I can just imagine the old timer saying, "Man, this thing won't ever do the job. It won't last. It won't work."
When I was a kid, what really hooked me on doing this stuff and being a carpenter and building houses and all that was my grandfather was a master plumber and I call a wood butcher, And he was always building stuff, garage apartments and all, and the family always had garage apartments and they always had rent houses. And they were cutting that wood with hand saws, and that you could smell that pine, that fresh pine. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that taught me not to be worried about bumblebees because they were carpenter bees. You get that new wood and they want to drill holes in it and make a home,
Right.
And he taught me, no, those bees won't hurt you. Even the wasps won't hurt you because they don't want to waste their sting on you. They're just flying around here. And that's so true. I mean, all these years, I have never been afraid of that.
This is a true rabbit hole.
Well, it is a true rabbit hole. But what I'm getting at is that you'll get hooked on this stuff if you start doing it. I mean, we all have. It's like a drug,
Well, and I think that's why you and I, the first time we met, I mean, we had so many experiences that we could share those experiences. We built a common bond, and then we're friends. And then next thing you know, if I've got a problem, I pick up the phone and I said, "What would you do, Pat?"
Right.
And I think that's the nature of why organizations that are full of givers work. Because people aren't trying to hide or protect their information. They're trying to how to build their nest, their influence.
Yeah, come November the 13th to our general meeting and meet me. I'd love to talk to you because I tell you what, then you'll be calling me wanting to know who can I get for this and who can I get for that. And I don't mind telling you as long as you tip me a dime every now and then, because we really are in this business to make money. Everybody is.
Right.
And if you're getting started in this, you need coaches, and we're definitely the group that can do it, because between the three of us right now, I figured that, well, I got the heaviest amount of years, but there's probably 100 years of experience sitting at this table. And really more than that, if you consider Hal, because he can help you with your website. He can help you with your computers. He can help you with lots of stuff because he is highly qualified, because he's been around this business with me for the last, 12 or 15 years.
15.
Yeah. So, come to us, guys. Come to our general meeting and get plugged in, and then meet all kinds of other cool people.
Well, we also have, you can't forget about Sharon. We do have Sharon.
Oh,
she's on our
Sharon.
team as well. She
That's
is
right.
behind the scenes, and we hope that she's coming back here soon, but she seems to be doing a lot better.
Well, I'll
which is
forget
good.
about her because
So I hope she's listening, Sharon.
Haven't seen her but twice.
We're glad to have you back. So let's go ahead and let's jump right into the show and talk about, taking action. When I first started, I did the same thing, which is I fell in the first category that I mentioned earlier, which is I just drowned myself into YouTube videos, was following a national guy. And I got to a point and I'm like, these videos aren't paying my bills. I need to take action. I need to go out there and do something. So the first thing I did is I went and put some signs on my truck and went and had me some t-shirts made. And I became a moving billboard. And then I started getting connected. And the thing about those shirts and magnets and stuff for your vehicles, they don't cost much money. I think I spent back then. I think I spent probably $200 or $300, and ended up within a couple of months I got two small deals, but I made $2,500. So that 10 times over, paid for itself. And from time to time I still get a lead here and there. In fact, just within between last Saturday and this week, I've had 3 people stop and talk to me, 2 because of my shirts and 1 because of my back window. And, we took my grandson and my nephews to the monster trucks last Saturday night, and that's where I met one of them. And then at the office it was yesterday, I was coming back upstairs and I had my bright orange shirt on with the black lettering on the back. And this guy, we got in the elevator and he's like, "You buy houses?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." Well, guess what? He's an investor as well. So I got his phone number and now we're going to have conversations, and he's going to be invited to, come, to the next meeting. And he's a connection. He could be a lender. He's looking for high-end houses. He's got money that he wants to put to work. Right. So he's another partner of ours, potentially.
Well, I see all the time, like people want to join Massive Passive, and I look, and they're friends of yours, and I say, "Hey, I'm friends with James too. Did you know we have a meeting?" Because you need to keep saying that over and over, because people, we have that on our Facebook and all that, but they might not be members of the Facebook, right? But they're our friends.
So you actually admit to the public that you're friends with me?
Well, only the people that I don't know.
So, Ray, do you have anything to add to what we were just talking about? Because we do have about 2 or 3 minutes, I think, until Loren is going to be on the phone. And then we'll talk to him for a few minutes, and we'll come back to...
Well, Ray can't talk for 2 or 3 minutes.
If I'm here, I'll interrupt. And plus, I'll tell Hal to mute his microphone.
Unfortunately, Hal has the ultimate say so. Yeah, he puts these notes up occasionally, and it's like, what happens if we don't do what he says?
Well, you never do what he says.
You get the mute button.
Yeah, you get the mute button. You can talk, but nobody will hear you. We were talking about the different stages people go through, because if the question is what's next, then you kind of have to know what stage you're in. Like, are you the starter? Are you the estate builder? Or are you the ender? And I didn't come up with that. I heard somebody else come up with it. But you have to think in terms of like where you are along that path. And then if the question is what's next, what is next? How do you get to, if you're that starter, how do you get to the estate builder? And what is an estate builder and what is an ender? And so I think, I don't know how much time we have, but we can start getting into that right after we've got a phone call coming in. So right after that, we'll talk about those 3 categories and what each one of those looks like, and then who we want to be in those categories during that process.
Yeah. So is Loren in here yet? Well, let's go ahead and pick him up real quick, and then we can get through that and go into our next deal. Loren, are you there?
I are.
Oh, good hearing from you, buddy.
Hi, Loren.
This week I talked to Loren earlier this week, and I said, he said, "Who's this?" And I said, "Well, it's Pat." He goes, "Well, I know other Pats." And I said, "What other Pats do you know?" He said, "Well, I know Pat Brady." And I said, "Well, do you know Nellie Bell?" He said, Yeah. So we went through this litany of
Do you realize there's only like 7 people in the universe that even know what y'all are talking about?
Yeah, well, anyway, you youngsters, Pat Brady was sidekick of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, and he drove a Jeep.
And who was Roy Rogers?
Roy Rogers was a famous.
Mute Ray. Mute him.
Well, you know, it's
Keep
funny.
Pat going.
You know that movie, Battle of Los Angeles, where the aliens are coming, you know, and they're fighting these aliens.
Right.
And this lieutenant told the sergeant that he looked like John Wayne, and the guy that was driving the bus, a younger guy, he said, "Who is John Wayne?" And I'm thinking like, well, you moron, you know, he's like the most horrific, greatest hero of all times. I mean, he was a CB, he was all this stuff. He was a cowboy, you know. And in our generation, John Wayne was huge, you know.
But then, since then, there's been Clint Eastwood and Rambo.
Yeah. So let's get on to our
Kid
vendors
Rock
here.
and-
Lauren, we're going to get off that, and we're going to talk about Fantastic Floors. How long have you been in business now, Lauren?
Fantastic is going on 30 years. Always family owned, family operated. We're not a franchise. We're not national. We service Harris County and all the counties around it, and we're exclusive for the real estate investor business. We do a lot of work with single family, multifamily management companies. What you guys do is what we do.
Yeah. Well, this week talking to you, I found out some other things. This is the cool thing about calling these vendors, asking them to be on a radio show. Like Lauren, I found out y'all do air conditioning, ducts, and some other stuff. Tell us what are the other services you have.
Well, in addition to all types of floor covering, we do air duct cleaning, dryer vent cleaning. We have a separate division that does carpet cleaning and dyeing, restoration. And the restoration is so important. It's anybody can go rent a machine at ATB and pretend they're cleaning the carpet, but what we have are the big truck-mounted cleaning units. Excuse me. And we can do just a clean if that's what you want. But if you want the carpet restored to as near new as possible, that means we're going to be able to repair seams, make patches where the dog or the cat tore the carpet up at the doors, restretch, enzyme treat if there'd been a urine issue. There's all kinds of things involved with restoration, much more than just the cleaning.
Yeah, you're saying that as it used to, when I was working for a big home investor franchise, we get these, back then people used more carpet, now the investors put more tile and all in the house,
Yeah, it's
right?
almost completely reversed of what it was 15
Right,
years ago.
and what I would do is I'd go in, let's say it was a lighter carpet and there was a stain in it, I just have the company stain all the carpet like a dark brown or something. And then I didn't have to pull the carpet out. And you do that kind of work too, right, for landlords?
Absolutely. And that's, again, it depends on the fiber content of the carpet. Nylon carpet was traditional, and that could be spot dyed or re-dyed. Some of the new stuff now that we're using that has the Flexicolor in it, it's almost impossible to bleach the color out of it.
Now, that's like using the Frigés, right? That's the one that's harder to do.
Yeah.
Yes, and for the same reason, then it's also impossible to re-dye it. But that gets us all off into the weeds on the other stuff. But,
so what's the most popular carpet that investors still use? They use like a tight Frigé or something like that?
Yeah, it's just a.
We use Frisé a lot.
I don't want. Yeah, I don't want to say it's multicolor because that gives you the mental picture of blues and greens and yellows, and that's not what I'm really meaning. It's tone on tone. So there may be 2 or 3 shades of beige or 2 or 3 shades of gray, all sprinkled in through the carpet. And the idea is it hides the soiling, it hides traffic pattern. And it's very popular right now.
And it's really kind of a low pile shag, right? And that you always call it the shag of the common day, Let
me interrupt here because the Loren's got a good assortment of stuff that investors want to use, and he caters a lot to investors. I mean,
Right.
that's his bread and butter.
Absolutely.
And so to me, having a good knowledge of the product is invaluable, because there is so much crap out there that when you go and you write a check for a flooring job and the product is junk, it costs you several $1,000s. And knowing somebody that knows what works before you figure it out, you don't want to figure it out. Especially if you've done 100 jobs, you got to figure it out. If you've done 20, you probably don't have it figured out. And you need somebody who knows what will work and won't work. There's been a couple times, and I hate to admit it, that I didn't listen to Loren over the years.
Oh, no.
You mean Ray not listen to somebody?
What? Ray's admitting that he doesn't know everything.
God, that hurts. That hurts.
Let's write this down.
Hey, no, we got it on recording.
And so now it's like when your surgeon says you need this, then you do it, and you just shut your mouth and you do it. And so Loren, to me, has brought two things to the table that I didn't understand the power of until I started using Loren. And this is a true story. I mean, Loren made this big difference. Really opened my eyes. One is I can depend on his advice, because what I'm doing, he's doing 100 times more than I'm doing. And the second thing is Loren looks at the job. He gives me a price. I approve it, and then he sends me an invoice, and I don't check his work, because I don't even know if I've ever had to ask him to come back on a job, but he's always been there. He always answers the phone.
Well, he's got
always
good
responsive.
installers. Let's face it, that's the problem right there.
But even the fact that you have human beings involved in the process, anything can happen at any time. So it's not just being perfect, because you can't be perfect, but what you can do is you can follow up with things and you can make it right. And that's what Loren has done. And that's the power of Loren. And the fact is, he represents virtually no overhead to my operation. So when I got a floor problem, it literally is a 5-minute problem. It's like, hey, can you get out there and do it? Yes, I'll be out there tomorrow. And then it's done a week later, or 4 days later, or 3 days later. And there's no overhead.
Right.
And a lot of these guys, it's like, oh, my car broke, and I got this problem, and there was a problem on the freeway, and it's like
I knew you were doing something to get him off the subject.
but it really matters. Well, I don't want to underestimate the power of this, and it really matters that that when you call for somebody to do something, they get the job done.
Right.
And Loren, I want to personally thank you for rescuing me so many times and just being the person that I could totally count on.
Well, I can't tell you how much all that means. And, I'm a little selfish with all this, because I have rental properties myself. So I get to experiment with the different products on the market. I know from my own experience what works and doesn't work. And so that helps me be able to tell the investor, my potential customer, what's going to work for their project. And I definitely try to do my very best to take care of my clients, because the only type of advertising we do is what I'm doing right now, and that's talking directly to the investor market. That's our market. Mm-hmm. I live on repeat and referral business. And if I didn't do you a good job, you and I wouldn't be talking this morning.
Well, that's why you agreed to advertise with us. One of the things I've learned, Loren, is that, times are good right now and everybody's booming. But, this is the time to advertise, because when things slow down, and they always do, we'll pop this bubble and it will slow down, is that you're connected, and you're connected with us, and you're connected with all this investor market, which keeps going on. When the new builders stop, guess what gets more busy? What we do.
Yeah.
Every time when the new construction would bust, I was always in the renovation, and I was working 7 days a week. I'd work a Christmas Eve, because that's how busy I'd be. And we're so proud to have you. You're a seasoned veteran, and that's the kind of vendors we need, is someone who knows this business and knows that, like for now, the carpet world's kind of slowed down in some respects with investors, because they found out that there's other floorings that they can use that don't get tore up, right?
Yeah, but
The
that's where the
vinyl-
junk is. You got to be careful.
Yeah,
with
you
the
got to be
junk.
careful, and that's why you need somebody like Loren, because
Right.
he'll advise you of what your needs are. So we really kind of got to move on. But what I'd like to say, Loren, is that your information is on our website, massivepassiveshow.com. And folks, y'all
Great.
can go in there and get Loren and our other vendors. And please do, because we have those on there for a reason.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you
I
go
don't
on,
want to starve to death, so
Yeah,
call
we
me.
don't want you to starve to death, because then you won't want to talk to us anymore.
He
That's
already
true.
doesn't eat enough. I can
Yeah.
tell by looking at him.
well, I want to share with our
I want
audience.
you to know I'm up to 144 pounds. Okay.
Okay, good. Well, Loren, it's great talking to you, and I'm sure in another couple of months we'll have you on again, and we'll talk more about flooring. Is that good?
That sounds great. Y'all have a good Halloween and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Thanksgiving, all that good stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk to you before then. You have a good one, buddy.
Oh,
Take
yeah.
care.
Thank you,
Thank
Lord.
you,
Bye-bye.
Lauren.
Bye, buddy.
So what I was going to say is when you're looking for our vendors or any information about us, you go to our website, massivepassiveshow.com. If you look at the top of the screen on your computer, now if you're on your phone, there'll be a drop-down menu in the top left. And it's got, find a vendor, become a student, our events page, so that just want to kind of throw that out there so that people know, where do I go to find this information at the website? I'm here at the website, but where do I find it? So every once in a while, we got to throw that out there. So let's go in. Before we get into continue our conversation, I wanted to kind of throw out a couple of things that, you can expect or look for in connecting yourself with a local RIA. Okay. And it's also, a coaching or mentoring program. There's a few things that you can expect to get under the right organization. There's going to be support, guidance, accountability, growth, and structure. So really quick, I'm gonna breeze through there. Go back. Support. You have the ability to work with others, reach out to experienced investors, and get your questions answered. Okay. There's no worse feeling to be stuck on a problem and not know who to call. They may not have the answer. Like I may call Ray for something and he may or may not know the answer, but if he doesn't, he pretty much knows where to get the answer. And then that falls also under guidance and accountability. We've got a new theme in our organization called AFO, and I have to keep it PG, so I'm gonna change the word, but it's accountable for outcomes.
Well, the accountable is not exactly the word we picked, but we can't say what
We can
it
let
is.
them use their imagination. And then there's growth and structure. Growth, me being around Ray, me being around Pat, other investors at our RIA, is just, it automatically helps me grow. And then structure. Structure is very important to have. Really quick, I just want to let y'all know that at our next meeting, we do have one of our speakers. We're going to have a panel that we're going to be interviewing. And one of the gentlemen that's going to be there, he actually, I hope I don't screw this up, but I believe he actually went to prison.
Right.
And he has
You just
started
broke his
over.
anonymity, dude.
Well,
No.
in prison, he read a book multiple times. It's called Think and Grow Rich. And what he did is he couldn't find the peer group that he needed where he was at and what he grew up in. And so he got this book and he found his peer group. Mm-hmm. And he read it and learned everything he could from it. Napoleon Hill wrote a couple good books, and he read the other book by Napoleon Hill. And he made that peer group. And then when he got out, he started hanging out with a good friend of ours, Landon, and started learning from him and seeing, hey, there's another way of doing this in this life. I don't have to learn from my teenage hoodlum buddies on the side of the street how to be successful. Let me learn from some real mentors, some real people who have actually done and achieved wildly in this life. And now when you see them and when you get to meet them, it's just amazing what he's went through and who he's become. And it's just, when you see something like that, you just have the utmost respect. And we were talking earlier about a lot of these drug dealers and stuff like that. They start out with the wrong influence. They don't have that mentor, that dad figure, or that person who's been successful in business around them. But they got the energy, they got the desire, they got the energy, and they do whatever they know how to do. And my hat's always off to those people.
Right.
But they need the proper guidance and direction.
But I brought that up to show you, hey, for
Is
one,
he going to be ours
you
our next event?
He'll be on a panel.
He'll be at our panel. But I brought him up for a couple of reasons. One, that goes to show you that you can look yourself in the mirror and you can do this. You just have to believe.
Right.
And then two, it's about getting connected and surrounding yourself with the right crowd, because that'll give you the structure you need. It'll give you the growth. And
people don't. You can't say that enough. They don't believe it. And yet, one of the people that are always successful, they always say, I surrounded myself by the people I wanted to be. I hung out with those people, and I became them.
Well, it's like I said earlier, you hang out with winners, you're going to be a winner.
Yeah.
And another degree of that is they wanted more for themselves. Mm-hmm. And so they took action. So let's go ahead and jump right in. What were the three things that you had mentioned earlier?
Well, we're trying to find out or figure out the big question, and it's always in life, the question is really important, and it's what's next. And the what next is going to depend on who you are and where you're at. And it's going to vary from person to person. The 21-year-old with no children, no wife, or no spouse, or the 50-year-old who's 15 years away from retirement, maybe sitting on some assets and stuff like that. And so in the investing world, occasionally you'll hear somebody say that person's a starter, or they're a estate builder, or they're an ender. And different people, I find that I'm now really in the ender category, and I was a starter and I was an estate builder, and now I find that I'm an ender. And it's like, do you want to be an estate builder when you should be an ender? And probably not, because you're gonna take a lot out of the value that you've accumulated, and the things that you can do. So you just have to know which category you're in, and then you have to know what to do. And if you want, we can kind of define what those categories are.
I was just fixing to ask you what is the estate builder and what is the ender?
Well, and the starter. Let's just start with the starter and just go through it real quick. And so the starter is somebody that hasn't probably done a deal, or they've maybe done 5 or less deals, and they're just getting their feet wet, and they're seeing that, hey, they're either a starter is somebody that's actually started, I would think, and not somebody that's thinking about starting. But a starter is somebody that's actually doing stuff, and they realize, oh, this is my first deal. And most investors, not most, but a big percentage of investors don't survive their first deal. And that's why Pat's on part of our team, because Pat is like, hey, you're going to survive. It won't be because you don't do the rehabbing right.
Well, I work for a hard money lending company. I saw so many. It's just amazing.
Right. You see it. You see these dead carcasses along the side of the road, and it's people that didn't do stuff right. But so a starter is that person who's just getting started, and they need education, they need leads, they need knowledge. And it really is more than what they can bring to the table. So they have to bring that to the table in the form of a mentor, a dad, a partner. Maybe they're connected really good at the RIA group. There's lots of ways to be that starter. And then the estate builder is somebody that's actually building the estate. I mean, it's really turning into something. They might have 20 or 30 properties. They might have a mobile home park. They might have a 40-unit apartment complex. They're all of a sudden really beginning to get control over their time. They're really building an estate. Their net worth is going up when they're sleeping. They realize that being a wholesaler and a flipper is actually a job, and that's not passive investing. And so estate builders are beginning to see the difference. It's that guy that learned how to wholesale and did 12 deals last year and made $300,000 and say, hey, I'm still not building my estate. I'm building my knowledge. I'm building my strength. I'm building my power, but I haven't learned creative real estate investing. There's a lot of things.
Well, and that's we'll stop you just a second.
Yeah.
It's called an income circle. When you're making $300,000, what happens? You start living in that circle. So you start driving a more expensive car, living, and spending more money. But if you're not creating passive money, then if something happens with that that stream of 300,000 coming in, and all of a sudden you're stuck with 50,000, then you're probably going to get upside down pretty quick.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly right. And I'm glad that you put that word on it, the income circle, because and that's a new term for me, but that's exactly what happens. The guy gets out there, is really successful, moves up in his company, he's making $300,000 a year, and all of a sudden the corporation finds out they can replace him for somebody making $100,000, and they can't say where you're going to take $100,000. They'll just fire him, get the other guy, and that guy's broke. And if he's a operations manager at a DP center or a data processing center, he may not have another job to replace that.
Well, we
with.
see that a lot when the oil goes upside down for a while. These
Right.
guys are all of a sudden are desperate because now they got all these bills, they got boats, they got all this stuff, and they just don't have the funds coming in to cover it.
And that's perfect too, because the oil cycle's a 5-year cycle.
Right.
So it's not like you can sit on the side and wait for it to come back.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you and I have seen those oil cycles. Being in Texas, we know the oil cycles. There's a 5-year cycle, so you're not going to survive. And the guy that's in that income circle of $300K a year, he's broke. He's broke in 3 months or 6 months.
That's right.
And so the state builder is somebody that's saying, look, how do I get that financial freedom? And in our conversations, we make sure that as part of the RIA and as we have panels and we're dealing with this, we're always talking in terms of like how to make that transition from having a decent income to having a decent passive income, and what are the ways to do it. And there's 100 ways in real estate alone to do it. There's lots of other industries you can probably do it in. I've been doing real estate my whole life, so that's what I understand. And so you've got to be that estate builder, and then that ender is that person that's like, how do I make generational wealth? How do I replace myself? And you'll be surprised how often that's happening if you'll just pay attention. People are replacing themselves every day. I go to a lot of these advanced real estate classes and advanced real estate workshops and seminars, and I'm shocked at the percentage of enders that are in that room, because they're controlling their risk. They're cleaning, they're pruning up their herd. They're cleaning the assets up. They're moving their assets around. They're managing where they're going, and then they're enjoying the good life.
And also another thing that gets people there, like going back to the income stream, you brought up the toys, but it goes back to mindset. What do you want? I heard something on, I don't know if it was on social media or on the radio, but I heard an investor, it was an advertisement for like another class that they're doing, and he was reaching the people that would complain about spending $50 or $100. Well, what about the expensive cell phones? We go out, we spend $1,000 on a cell phone, or we spend $50 a month on Hulu or these other things that aren't making us money. I have no interest in paying that kind of money for a cell phone. I would rather take that money and go spend it on marketing. If it's not going to give me the potential to make money, I mean, there's times that I do waste money, but I want to invest that money and give me the potential to make more money.
Well, we actually were asked a question of like, how do you make a lot of money real fast in equity or cash? And it forced us to learn a math lesson that I didn't know until literally a year ago. And a $500 a month cash flow at a typical discount rate that investors would pay is worth $75,000. So, and if you think about that, so you don't have to have $75,000 in the bank to have $75,000 in equity. You have to have $500 cash flow. And then the thing is like, well, geez, there's a lot of things I can make a $500 a month cash flow thing. And once you start thinking like that, now you're becoming that estate builder. You stop being that wholesaler. And then if you spend $50 on Hulu, well, that's $7,500 of equity that you're throwing away, right? That $50 is $7,500, $500, 75. So you can see that these things that you're throwing away, these cash flows, these cutting out your expenses, can make a big difference on the bottom end. And when your net worth increases, it doesn't do it in a straight linear fashion. It's in an exponential fashion. So it starts accumulating. You start making more money than what you're living off of. Then that money starts adding on, and that's exactly what we did in our Roth IRA. I started moving a lot of my deals over into the Roth IRA, and it just exploded. It was like, where did that money come from? And it's because you start thinking about how to place things, what you're doing, how you're spending your money, what you're throwing your money away on. And we don't want to do that.
And well, the beautiful thing about this, what I love about this show too is, I've been around a long time, and I'm sitting here learning from Ray talking. I wish I'd met you, back when, when you started, because you and I had really been rich together.
I'd tell people, Pat, that I never stopped rehabbing for my first job, but for the first 10 years, I was in it heavy rehabbing. I was wiring the houses, installing air conditioners, and I realize now that I spent 9 years too long doing that. Mm-hmm. But I didn't.
Well, me too. If I didn't find out about this hard money thing in this world until about 15 years ago,
Right.
And all of a sudden it was like I exploded. I remember sitting in my office one day after we had a construction meeting and talking about our properties and stuff. And Debbie Gant come in my office and she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Look, I'm going to get this." She said, "You already got it. You've been doing this longer. We're learning from you about remodeling.
Right.
You're just having to learn the difference between retail and wholesale."
Right.
But you've already got all this stuff. We're listening to you about things. Well, and that's what you have to realize that you have knowledge about certain stuff, but now you're getting to put all the pieces together.
Well, I think you have to learn how to make a product produce. Right. A house is a product, it has to produce. That's where rehabbing, property management makes a difference. You have to learn how to create opportunities and structure them. That's where being an expert in negotiation makes a difference. Mm-hmm. And you have to learn about money and not really understand how to manipulate and manage that money, and that makes a difference.
So really quick, I think we're fixing to be cut off here in a minute, but there was a football player that used to play here in Houston, and he's retired now, but when he was playing, he made multi-million dollars every year, but he lived on, I believe it was like $60,000 that he forced himself to live on. And today he's well taken care of. But that was a mindset thing. I just wanted to.
Well, it kept his income circle down.
Now, what do we got coming up? I know we got a bus tour coming up.
We have our November 11th in San Antonio. We have Robin Thompson. She's the rehabbing queen. She's going to be in town in San Antonio Thursday, November 11th. And then in Houston, November 13th, go to MassivePassiveShow.com. That's MassivePassiveShow.com for all of our events, all of our information.
And we got a bus tour December 4th.
Bus tour December 4th.
Right.
That's it, right?
I'd say so.
When the music comes on, that's it, right?
That's how they shut you up around here, Pat.
Good job, man.
Play the